A 64-core, 128-thread CPU. A new challenger in laptop processors. A feisty new fighter in mid-range graphics. These three things have three letters in common. Plus, SSDs take on stunning new capacities, speeds, and looks. PC components at CES 2020 weren't all about the AMD, but it sure seemed like it at times. The company dominates our CES Most Interesting list this year, and for good reason, seeing how both Intel and Nvidia came to the show floor almost empty-handed of consumer-ready new hardware or silicon. That said, Intel did give us a proof of life of its dedicated GPU, the DG1. The storage scene showed some intriguing innovations, too, among them a new modular business storage ecosystem from drive giant Seagate, super small high-capacity drives from WD, and some extreme speed SSDs in internal and external formats. Let's check them all out. AMD Ryzen 4000 mobile CPUs. More AMD silicon, more headaches for chip giant Intel. The new 7nm process AMD Ryzen 4000 series of mobile CPUs, code-named Renoir during development, will be topped by an 8-core, 16-thread part, and it has more buzz than any AMD mobile release to date. All of the chips announced are backed by some flavor of onboard Vega graphics, and they promise to bring the heat to Intel on many fronts, even, if AMD is to be believed, in single-threaded performance, an area where the chip underdog has struggled to maintain pace for years. The company claims its 4000 series Ryzens will contain solutions up and down the stack for most mainstream customers, whether they're mobile gamers, on-the-go content creators, or even users looking for value for power alternatives in the slimmest and lightest laptops. And the company was able to come up with design wins right out of the gate from key laptop makers, among them Dell, in a G5 Special Edition gaming machine, Lenovo, in a Yoga Slim model, Asus, in our Best of Show winning ROG Zephyrus G14, and MSI, in its budget-minded Bravo 15. With so many strong showings versus Intel racked up in 2019 in the desktop space, is AMD poised to rock the mobile market? 2020 will tell, but it looks like it has a better chance than ever. AMD Radeon RX 5600 XT. While the AMD Radeon RX 5600 XT certainly looks to be no slouch, we should qualify this category up front. The RX 5600 XT wasn't necessarily the best new GPU announced at the show this year, it was the only GPU announced at the show this year. The Intel DG1 referenced above was just a technical preview. Set to compete against NVIDIA's GeForce GTX 1660 and GeForce GTX 1660 Super graphics cards in 1080p gaming, the Radeon RX 5600 XT is a mainstream price play in a world of GPUs that's growing increasingly granular in the $150 to $300 range by the minute. This is the successor to long-running, power-hungry cards like the Radeon RX 580 and RX 590, and 1080p play gamers who are still on older cards like those or the GeForce GTX 1060 might recognize it as a possible 2020 sweet spot equivalent. That said, if it can beat both those GTX 1660 class GPUs on price-to-performance ratio, something AMD excelled at for most of 2019, graphics cards could get real interesting in early 2020. We're excited to see how it holds up when we get our hands on it later this month. AMD Ryzen Threadripper 3990X. What's better than a 32-core, 64-thread mega CPU like our current editor's choice among super high-end chips, the AMD Ryzen Threadripper 3970X? How about a 64-thread, 128-core Ryzen Threadripper 3990X that works on the same TRX 40 platform? The AMD CES 2020 keynote saw yet another XXL Godzilla AMD Core Monster CPU unveiled, this one decidedly not mainstream. It's made for the most dedicated and power-hungry content creators out there, most notably VFX and video render professionals working for movie studios and other environs where every saved moment is major money. The thing is, though, relatively speaking, This new CPU, while eye-buggingly expensive by consumer standards, is not major money in situations where it counts. At the keynote, AMD CEO Dr. Lisa Su ran a demo that claimed the Threadripper 3990X could beat $20,000 worth of Intel's Xeon Workstation CPU by up to 30% in performance. Why does this matter? Well, the Threadripper 3990X will go on sale February 7 for the mean-tastic price of just $3,990. We'll have to see how the real-world performance numbers shake out, but even if that's slightly exaggerated, it's another place where AMD is bringing a flamethrower to a room full of tinder. Seagate Live Drive Shuttle, made for businesses that need to move a lot of data on a daily basis within or between facilities. The Seagate Live Drive Shuttle is a new piece in a developing Seagate-specific storage ecosystem. Pricing on all the bits is to come. Live Drive as a whole gives IT departments or production environments alternate ways to get their data from here to there, or swap around large amounts of data on site. In a more prosaic sense, it's a new series of modular drives and receptacles. Geared toward business-grade storage, the modules, containing SSD, flash card, CF Express, or platter drives according to the use case, can interface with live drive housings in rack mount format, a standalone drive carrier, the shuttle, or multi-drive banks. Instead of relying on plain old Ethernet, the Live Drive Shuttle offers up a one-pole, one-handed carry system that lets users swap out modules capable of holding up to 16 terabytes of data per block. They can then ship modules or rotate them off-site for fast transfer of mega masses of data too big for easy cloud transfer. The specific shuttle housing shown here also has a monochrome display embedded in the top of the unit so you can manage on-drive data without the need for a connected PC. XPG Sage. The XPG Sage, a PCI Express 4.0 drive, is a little strip of speed. XPG is ADATA's performance brand, and this little M.2 NVMe drive is rated to top out at a whopping 7,000 megabytes per second read, and 6,100 megabytes per second write thanks to its ability to use 4 lanes of the PCI Express 4.0 spec at once. The drive will come in capacities ranging up to 4 terabytes, and although we didn't see any passive cooling options attached to the floor model, as long as your motherboard comes with a way to keep this drive under heat limits, most PCI Express 4.0 ready boards do. The Sage and like drives sure to follow should move your data around at speeds unlike anything else we've seen before in the consumer SSD market. XPG-SE900G RGB Series. ADATA's XPG-SE900G external RGB Series SSD has no need to look as good as it does, but dang, does it look good. First, the interface is as fast as current USB gets, with this USB 3.2 Gen 2x2 drive capable of sending and receiving data at a max rate of 2,000 megabytes per second. All you'll need is a Gen 2x2 compliant port to get the maximum speeds. A taller order than it may sound. More the thing, though, it's encased in an iridescent, RGB lit shell that really needs to be experienced to be believed. It pulses with a subtle, understated use of RGB that is unlike anything we've seen before. We might be halfway inclined to use it ourselves just on the basis of looks alone, interface be damned. WD, SanDisk 8 TB prototype. We should qualify this before we dive in. Everything in this SSD is still in the prototype stage, and any final version, assuming there even is one, may look a bit different. The shell resembles that of earlier SanDisk portable SSD models, and the potential speed aspect is like that of the XPG drive above. USB 3.2 Gen 2x2, aka Superspeed USB 20 gigabits per second. But the story is far less about speed than raw capacity, 8 terabytes in such a tiny portable. Look at the relative size versus the mini chocolate above. Hopefully this drive makes it out of the testing stage and onto shelves soon, because we'll be the first in line when it does. Given that WD also showed a tiny 1 terabyte USB-C, USB a dual drive about an inch long, the Ultra Dual Drive Lux, which is slated to hit the street this quarter, we have every confidence it eventually will. We won't be the only ones anxiously awaiting this drive, so, we're sure, will be plenty of on-the-go videographers and in-field RAW photo shooters. ASUS Hyper M2x16 Gen 4 card for anyone who creates a lot of content on a daily basis. Speed, and more specifically, data transfer speed, is a big part of the equation. And while PCI Express 4.0 M.2 slots equipped with NVMe technology have upped the speed limits in the last year, the AMD X570, Ryzen, and TRX40 Threadripper motherboards that support this superfast new protocol have a finite number of slots to work with. This is where cards like the ASUS Hyper M2x16 Gen 4 card come in. Featuring slots for 4 PCI Express 4.0 drives, with a heatsink and fan cooling system that should keep them all nice and chilled during intense parallel workloads, this PCI Express expansion card should shoulder the load for anyone working with large files on a daily basis. Aorus RTX 2080 Ti gaming box. We saw a few new eGPUs at the show this year, but none of them did what they do quite like the $1,499 Aorus RTX 2080 Ti gaming box should. Unlike most, for starters, this one comes with the graphics card built in. eGPUs are a divisive product category, and whether or not they're actually worth the money and effort is a debate for another day. But, despite your feelings on them, there's no denying the gaming box is an interesting eGPU entry, featuring a top-dog GeForce RTX 2080 Ti crammed under the hood in a fully liquid-cooled setup, using an AIO cooler contained within the GPU. It's backed by a 450-watt power supply, as well as 2 Thunderbolt 3 controllers to retain maximum bandwidth for the high-end graphics data stream. The second controller handles the data for the onboard USB ports and Ethernet interface. Those ports allow the gaming box to also act as a docking hub for your attached laptop, connected to keyboard, mouse, and other external gear. Whether or not this equates to faster performance than an air-cooled setup remains to be seen, but here's a high-end eGPU idea that hasn't been tried or tested before. Aorus points out that it's ideal for content creators using GPU-accelerated software, just as much as for gamers. Lenovo Legion Boost Station. This $249 eGPU is decidedly more mainstream than Aorus Elite box above. Lenovo's Legion model complements its dedicated GPU-less Legion Y740's gaming laptop with a big bone design that accepts most modern cards. You can get the box bare at the $249 price and bring your own card, or Lenovo will bundle the Boost Station with a GeForce GTX 1660 Ti, a GeForce RTX 2060 Super, a GeForce RTX 2070 Super, or a GeForce RTX 2080 Super, or an AMD Radeon RX 5700 XT. 3 USB ports and an Ethernet jack let it work, like the Aorus above, as an external dock. It's a low-cost bet in the Thunderbolt 3 eGPU space if you want to experiment. Please subscribe our YouTube channel Listen News here. If you like the video, please like, comment and share the video.